Luana, 22, an architecture intern, ran her hand along the bathroom wall on the 10th floor of the Prometheus building. The building, a work of glass and polished concrete in the heart of Boston, was impeccable. The smell of fresh paint and hotel soap fragrance filled the air. Suddenly, the sound of her own heartbeat grew louder, and the world around her fell silent. In her mind, the building didn't collapse with noise, but with a frightening quietude. She saw a cloud of gray dust rising against the blue sky, and, among the debris, what appeared to be the tip of a shoe. In a fleeting glimpse, she noticed a strand of brown hair, the same color that escaped from her bun. The premonition was quick, silent, and deadly. The echo of silence from her premonition still resonated in Luana's ears. The soft morning light of Boston, entering through the panoramic windows of the 10th floor, seemed false. She needed to act, but how? The inauguration ceremony, with the mayor and the press, was scheduled for 45 minutes away. Adrenaline pulsed through her veins while fear froze her in place. The vision of that strand of hair amid the debris was a cruel and personal reminder that disaster awaited her. She ran to the team on the 3rd floor, where she found Mark, 58, her supervisor, a veteran architect with weathered skin and cynical eyes. With a radio in hand and the smell of strong coffee emanating from his cup, he inspected the electrical connections. Irritated by the security team's slowness, Mark was proud of Prometheus, a work he swore was indestructible. "Mark, sorry for the interruption," Luana began, her voice trembling but controlled. "I am reviewing the latest data from the modeling software and found an anomaly in the vibration sensors on the 10th floor. It's something very small, an inconsistency that only an AI algorithm would detect, but it could be a problem." Mark looked at her with disdain. "Anomaly? Luana, the computer doesn't have an architect's intuition. It's a reading error. We've already had 10 engineering reviews." "I know," she insisted, "but the system is reporting stress peaks in the facade supports that didn't make sense before. We need an hour for a manual check of the critical points. We can say there was a small problem with the stage lighting wiring, something easy to fix." Mark sighed, with the expression of someone whose peace had been disturbed. "1 hour, Luana, but if this is just an intern superstition, tomorrow you'll hear my sermon about the importance of time and reputation." Luana, relieved, nodded. She then ran to the 15th floor to warn Jessica, 26, an electrical engineer full of life and with a contagious passion for indie music, who was adjusting the sound system volume. The cold air of the upper floor, which Luana attributed to the air conditioning, actually seemed like an omen. Jessica, with headphones around her neck, smiled. "Luana, ready for the show? The people from San Francisco performing here today are going to rock it." Luana felt a pang of guilt. Jessica's smile was proof of the life she was about to save. She tried to convince Jessica to leave, using the same excuse she had used with Mark. Jessica, though confused, trusted Luana. As they descended in the elevator, the air became increasingly heavy, as if the building was breathing one last breath. The sonic explosion of the collapse reached Luana 2 blocks away, where she was in a corner coffee shop. The cappuccino cup in her hands trembled, spilling some hot coffee on her skin. The glass wall of the coffee shop vibrated with the crash, and the sound of the fall seemed like a mixture of thunder's roar with a metallic groan. Outside, Boston's clear sky was swallowed by a cloud of gray dust that spiraled upward, forming a huge mushroom. That pile of debris, which Luana had seen in her premonition, was now real. Chaos exploded around her, with screams and sirens echoing. But for Luana, amid all the commotion, the only thing that mattered was the silence of her premonition. The news spread quickly. Thanks to Luana's intervention, the building had been emptied moments before the disaster. She was immediately treated as a hero. Mark, covered in dust and with a superficial cut on his forehead, hugged her in the midst of the chaos, his eyes teary with gratitude. "You saved me, girl. You saved us. How did you know?" Jessica, pale and still in shock, held Luana's hand tightly. "I don't know what would have happened if we had stayed. I feel like I should have died there." Luana smiled, but felt a chill in her stomach. Her colleague's gratitude didn't diminish her feeling that something was wrong. Guilt consumed her, as if she were living on borrowed time. That night, in her apartment, she turned on the computer and opened the 3D file of the Prometheus building. The same one she had used to convince Mark. The model on the screen was intact, but she, with a shiver, began to perceive a disturbing pattern. Mark spent most of his time on the 3rd floor, Jessica on the 15th, and she, Luana, was on the 10th when she had the premonition. 3 floors, 3 survivors. Fate hadn't made a mistake. It had just been postponed. The feeling of having cheated death was as frightening as the disaster itself. 2 weeks had passed since the collapse, but for Luana, the air still smelled of dust and destruction. The premonition wasn't a memory, but a ghost that followed her. One afternoon, while driving home, the radio news broke the story. The announcer's voice was calm, but the words hit Luana like a punch to the stomach. Mark Jensen, the renowned architect who narrowly escaped the Prometheus building tragedy, was found dead on the balcony of his 3rd-floor apartment. Police are investigating the cause of the fall. 3rd floor. She parked the car and called Mark's apartment. There was no answer. She knew she couldn't just stand still. Defying fear, she drove there. Mark's apartment, with the door slightly open for forensics, seemed like a time capsule of his life. The smell of old wood, whiskey, and the expensive cologne he wore lingered in the air. The living room was full of scale models of his buildings, perfect and impeccable, except for one detail. On the 3rd-floor balcony, from where he had fallen, there was a small crack, a spider web that branched out in the metal of the railing. The crack, almost imperceptible, was identical to the one she had seen in the bathroom tile on the 10th floor. Luana felt the air in her house become cold, freezing. She ran to the phone, calling Jessica in Denver. "Jessica, please tell me you're okay." Jessica's voice, on the other end of the line, was tense but alive. "I am ... I have a terrible feeling, Luana. I feel like the building is haunting me. I feel like death is coming for me." Luana was speechless. Fate didn't care about the location, only about the number. Mark had escaped from the 3rd floor of the building, but not from the number 3. And now, fate was looking for Jessica and Luana. Jessica's death was announced in a small news footnote, overshadowed by the larger story of the collapse. Luana read about the accident on a Denver news website. Jessica had died in a car accident near a construction site on the outskirts of the city. The vehicle, according to the report, had lost control on a curve. A photo of the location showed a speed limit sign crumpled on the ground, 15 miles per hour. The number 15. Luana felt the ground beneath her feet disappear. It wasn't just a coincidence, it was a punishment. Fate was relentless, creative, and cruel. Luana's phone rang. It was a call from an unknown number, but she answered. The voice on the other side was broken, almost inaudible. "Luana ... It's me, Mark. I'm on a voicemail. I felt something strange. I felt like I was being watched ... pursued. I felt like the building was following me. You're in danger. Run. Move away. I don't know if you can escape." Mark's voice disintegrated into static. The air in Luana's apartment suddenly became charged with the smell of smoke. The same smell of something disintegrating that she had felt on the day of the premonition. Her computer screen lit up, and an email from Jessica, sent a day before her death, appeared. The attachment was a floor plan of her apartment in Denver. The plan showed the apartment on the 15th floor, with Jessica's window opening to the street. The same street where the accident happened. Luana closed the computer and sat on the floor, crying. Fate didn't care about the method, only about the number. She knew she needed to flee. She needed to break the pattern. If fate wanted her because of the number 10, she would deceive it. Luana, now a fugitive from her own destiny, left her life in Boston behind. She moved to a quiet, nameless neighborhood in Los Angeles, a one-story house. There was no number on the door. She had no landline phone. Her new cell phone didn't contain the number 10 in its sequence. She avoided the 10th aisle at the supermarket, didn't have 10 plates in her kitchen, and even changed her name on unofficial documents. She became a shadow. The smell of wet earth and weeds, instead of the smell of concrete, was a balm for her tormented soul. One night, she went to the city library. She read about multiverse theories, about the physics of time, about inevitability. She tried to understand what was happening, but there was no answer. The only certainty was her destiny. Suddenly, the librarian announced, "Luana, your book on the geometry of chaos is on shelf number 10. Luana's heart stopped. She felt a chill down her spine. She thanked the librarian and ran out of the library without taking the book. She knew she needed to stay away from anything that could connect the number 10 to her. She isolated herself, working remotely on her architecture projects in a safe house without numbers. The projects were for single-story buildings, without the arrogance of scraping the sky. She felt the weight of loneliness, but preferred the company of her fear to sharing life with other people who could become targets. She was alive, but the price was isolation and silence. A silence that somehow seemed the same as her premonition. Years passed. Luana, now a renowned architect of horizontal and safe houses, was working on a new project, a residence for a large family, when her computer monitor went black. It wasn't a blackout. The house's power remained on. The screen flickered, showing a video. It wasn't a video. It was a simulation of the Prometheus building, the collapse, but this time it was different. The simulation showed the collapse from the point of view of one of the support pillars, the point of view of an inanimate thing. And in the middle of the debris, Luana, wearing the same blouse she wore on the day of the premonition, was sitting in her chair, designing. The scene freezes. The image transforms into a technical drawing. A floor plan of her apartment with a large red cross in the center. What she didn't know was that her new house, her sanctuary, was on a plot of land that originally belonged to block number 10 of the city. Luana's monitor went black. The power in the house went out. And one last sound of something very heavy falling echoed in the darkness. A sound of concrete, a symbolic final fall. A premonition was fulfilled, not in time, but in destiny. And the camera moves to the computer screen, which had returned. The icon of a new file, from a modeling program that Luana had never installed, appears on the desktop. The file name was Next Project, Concrete and Silence. Phase 2.